everyone, welcome to the bookcase. We do not have an intro. My name is Taylor and this is Oscar. Shout out to user Lovely Gallows for Oscar's name idea, because when I hold him like a little award statue, and I thought that was very cute. So Oscar's gonna live down here. It's the end of March. I don't know how that happened so quickly, but it is here. And that means we are officially 1/4 of the way done with 2025. What even is time? I don't know. But I do know I read quite a few books in this first quarter of the year. So I thought, why not do a Q1 wrap-up? I want to go ahead and go through everything I have read this year so far, as well as how I am doing on my reading goals. So my reading goal initially for the year was 100 books, and I have read 27. At the moment, I'm still counting manga alongside my normal print books. I might change that as the year goes along. I'm not sure. I do usually have at least one month-long reading slump every year where I start focusing on another hobby. Sometimes I end up with a month where I've read 1 or 2 books. So maybe ultimately all that reading manga will do is make me stop feeling pressured every November and December to hurry up and get to 100 books. But it also might push me very far over, so I might have to adjust my goal. I don't know. If you are someone who reads books and manga and tracks your manga in any particular way, do let me know about it. I would love some tips. I'm kind of new to this. For what it's worth, though, 7 of the books that I have read so far this year have been volumes of manga. And funnily enough, also one of my other goals was I wanted to focus more on books that I already own. But only 7 of the 27 books that I have read have been books that I own. Another of my goals this year was to join or start some book clubs, and I have done both. I have joined a couple of online book clubs, and I have also started one with my friends. Shout out to the Reading Rainbows. I also wanted to tab some more books this year. I wanted to annotate. I have annotated the 3 Mistborn books, Era 1, and I enjoyed doing that. I want to do it more, and I have done that with at least one book. I did annotate House of Frank as I read it. We will talk about that more later. And then my other main goal was I wanted to finish some series that I have that are open-ended, and unfortunately I don't think any of the books that I've read so far this year have been finishing series that I read. But the year is still young. We're only 1/4 of the way through. I have time. So I did deliberate for a little while on how I wanted to structure this video. My initial thought was just to go through chronologically, like I would do a monthly wrap-up on TikTok where I talk about the books in the order that I read them. But there are some books that I wanted to talk about next to each other. There are some books that I wanted to segue into other books, and I wanted to be able to talk about the manga that I read cohesively, when for each of them I did kind of read a volume here, a volume there, spread out across the months. So rather than doing this chronologically, what I'm going to do is I am going to group them by star rating, and I'm going to go through from the lowest star ranking all the way up to the highest star ranking. With the slight exception of the manga, I am still going to talk about the manga that I've read all at once. I'm going to talk about one story, each volume that I read of it all at once, even if those volumes got different ratings, and I'll tell you what those ratings were. Does that make sense? If it doesn't now, it will when you watch. I just wanted to put it out there. This is not the order that I read these books. This is order of the least best to the best. Now, so far this year, I don't have any books that I've flat out hated, but I do have a few that I didn't like as much as I was hoping I would like, and I do have one that I don't think I can say in good conscience that I liked at all. So we're going to talk about that book first, and it is ironically called Must Love Books by Shauna Robinson. So Must Love Books is a contemporary fiction novel, and to be quite honest, I have completely forgotten the main character's name, which should tell you what kind of an impression this left on me. But it is about a woman who is struggling to make ends meet in her corporate soul-crushing job. She works for a book publisher. The job, not only is it soul-crushing, but it also does not pay very well, and in an effort to make ends meet, she decides to take a former coworker up on the offer to freelance at another publisher. So that's the conflict, aka business malpractice? At the very least, some contracts are being violated here. Now, I have to be honest, contemporary fiction is not my most loved genre, but I did really like another book by this author, The Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks. Here's the thing. Must Love Books is Shauna Robinson's debut. And I think everything she was attempting to accomplish in Must Love Books, she ended up actually executing in Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks. The liar revealed plot is a tough trope for me to get behind, but it can work if you feel like the lie is justified. And I do think that the lie in Banned Bookshop is justified. I do not think the lie in Must Love Books is justified. I started this on audiobook and I switched to ebook so that I could skim through it faster, and I didn't skim a lot. I basically only skimmed the liar revealed moment. I just wanted to be over with this book as soon as possible, and yet I didn't DNF it, and I'm not giving it 1 star. I'm giving it 2 stars. I do think there are some elements that are handled well. If you read the premise of this book and it sounds good to you, just go read Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks. It does basically the same thing with a different character, but basically the same thing, and it does it well. This really didn't land for me. Now, that was the only book that I have rated below 3 stars. Everything else on this list is a 3-star or higher, so I think that's pretty good, all things considered. And next up, we have 2 books that I'm going to talk about together because it is really difficult to talk about the one without talking about the other, and that is the Skin of the Sea duology by Natasha Bowen. We have the book 1, Skin of the Sea, and book 2, Soul of the Deep. This is a YA fantasy that is loosely retelling The Little Mermaid, and it's inspired by West African history and folklore. It is the 15th century, and we are following our protagonist, Simi. Simi is a Mami Wata, which is a West African mythological creature. It is actual Mami Wata in actual West African mythology are depicted a couple of different ways because the mythology is actually quite broad. But in this story, the Mami Wata used to be humans who died at sea when they were thrown overboard from slave ships. And the Orisha Yemoja transformed 7 of these girls into the Mami Wata. And what they do is they go and they collect the souls of everyone who is thrown from ships, of everyone who dies at sea, and they guide those souls home to the afterlife. The plot kicks off when she finds a boy who's been thrown overboard who has not died yet. And she finds that she's not able to just let him die and watch him die and then carry his soul to the afterlife. She has to act. So she saves him. But in doing so, violates her, mythological purpose, and also violates a treaty between the gods that she did not know existed. But now, because that treaty has been violated, she has to go on a journey and summon the supreme creator, Olodumare, so that they can make this right. The boy, on the other hand, is looking for his missing siblings who have been kidnapped by the trickster Orisha, Ishu, and they end up working together to go on this journey, summon the creator, find the twins, and then a lot of stuff keeps happening that then bleeds into the plot of book 2. If all of that sounds interesting to you, I would say go ahead and give this duology a shot. I did not dislike it. I did not really love it either. It was a 3. They're both 3 stars. I gave both of them 3 stars. They were good. They were fine. The thing that really fell flat for me with these books was, outside of the very creative premise and the very richly detailed setting, the actual plot and characters felt very cookie cutter to me. I feel like there are a lot of other YA fantasies that are much more creative with their actual characters, and I'm a character girly. Book 1 had a few pacing problems, but book 2 largely fixed that. Book 1 also had a bit of a tone problem, but book 2 again mostly fixed that. Like, book 2 overall I think is an improvement on book 1, but just not so much an improvement that it bumped it up from 3 to 3.5 for me. So if it looks interesting to you, I say give it a shot, but both of these were 3s for me. Moving from fantasy back into the land of contemporary fiction, we have Arsenic and Adobo by Mia Manansala. This is one of those cozy mysteries where our amateur sleuth is like a baker, a barista, a cafe owner, a restaurant owner, someone who works in food service and who cooks and bakes a lot, and there are lots of descriptions of food, and there's a recipe book in the back, you know, like those Joanne Fluke chocolate fudge murder books that you see moms get from the library all the time. I'm allowed to say that because my mom got those from the library all the time. Hi, Mom. Thank you for watching. You might have guessed from the title, but this book is by a Filipina author, and our main character is Filipina. So all of the food is Filipino food. The recipes in the back are things like Salabat spiced banana bread and chicken adobo and ube crinkle cookies. And honestly, the descriptions of food are why this book is 3.5 stars and not also 3 stars. The food in this sounds so good. Not only do we get all this good descriptions of Filipino food, but most of the other murder suspects are also restaurant owners. So our main character, Lila, keeps going to these different restaurants and interviewing these people who she thinks might have had something to do with our mysterious death. And so we get descriptions of the food in those restaurants as well. We get sushi, we get small town diner, we get high-end coffee, we get all these different things. It's very fun, and it made me very hungry. Aside from that, there's not that much to say about this book. I honestly think I enjoyed The Skin of the Sea duology more than this, even though this has 3.5 stars instead of 3 stars. Again, that little extra kick from the description of the food, I very much enjoyed that. But this just wasn't what I look for in a mystery book. You very much understand why our main character is so invested in this death, and it's not just because you're the number one suspect and have to prove your innocence, although that is what's happening. I'm sorry, I don't buy her as an amateur sleuth. That's my main issue. She is not a good detective. And what I really don't buy is I don't buy the preview of book 2 that I read, where the detective who was working on this case calls our main character to come and try and help him with the second, because she did absolutely nothing to solve this murder. The murder almost gets incidentally solved. Her best friend figures it out better than she does, really. It's just, I didn't buy her as a sleuth. And so there are other books in this series, and if you love this genre, I think this is a good example of it. I just don't think that this is the type of mystery for me, so I probably will not be continuing the Tita Rosie Kitchen books, unfortunately. So that book didn't really hit the spot, but fortunately what did really hit the spot was Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor by Xiranjie Zhao. Yes, the Xiranjie Zhao who wrote Iron Widow. They have a middle grade book. I am a self-proclaimed lover of middle grade fantasy, and so when I found out that Xiranjie Zhao had a middle grade fantasy book that's a little bit Percy Jackson, a little bit Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, and with just like a little sprinkling of Ready Player One over the top, I knew it was a book that I had to read, and I was not disappointed. The premise is that our main character, Zachary Ying, is a descendant of the Dragon Emperor. Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor. Specifically, he is a descendant of the first Emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, and if you are a descendant of somebody, their ghost is able to possess you and take control of your body, a la season 1 of Yu-Gi-Oh! However, the possession itself goes wrong, and instead, Qin Shi Huang ends up possessing Zachary's VR goggles while Zach is playing a Monster Collection battle type VR game. So Zach is not having his body puppeted around like the other characters in this book who are descended from emperors. He has the first emperor of China yapping in the ear of his VR headset, telling him what to do, how to use magic, giving him facts about Chinese history and mythology as they are plot relevant. It's very fun. Jiranjie Zhao does not shy away from uncomfortable or political conversation just because this is a book aimed at a younger audience. We are dealing with some very real things here. We are exploring through Zach's character the alienation that he feels because he feels disconnected from his culture and his heritage. He is also a part of a minority ethnic group in China, so he's also feeling this sense of alienation in that way. And all of that is on top of the fact that he's not 100% sure if he can trust Qin Shi Huang because Qin Shi Huang did some really messed up things in history, but he also did do a lot of good things in terms of overall like history and impact. Turns out real life historical figures are more complicated than just being on the good or bad side of a video game. So I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I need the next one in my hands the moment it is published because just like with Iron Widow, Jiranjie Zhao knows how to end a book with you with your jaw on the floor, desperate to know what happens next. So I absolutely recommend this one. Again, 4 stars. I had a great time with it. Next up, we have another fantasy book that would be great for younger readers. We have Ilatsoe by Darcy Littlebadger. This is not urban fantasy in that we are in the city. We are in the sprawling middle of nowhere suburbs of Texas, but this is urban fantasy in that this is the modern world with cell phones and the internet and texting, but with magic fully integrated into every aspect of society. We have federally mandated limitations on fairy ring teleportation. We have psychic readings that are admissible in court as evidence. And we have magical creatures that are just out amongst the humans. We have vampires, we have coyote people, we have ghosts. We follow our main character, Ellie, which is short for her full name, Ilatsoe, and she is a 17-year-old Lipan Apache girl who can summon the spirits of the dead as ghosts, but only animal ghosts, not human ghosts. However, when her cousin dies in a mysterious accident, she is contacted by his spirit right before he passes on, and he says, Ellie, it wasn't an accident. I was murdered. This is my murderer's name. I need you to find him and I need you to stop him and bring him to justice so that this doesn't happen to anyone else and that my family is safe. This was another 4-star book for me. I really enjoyed it. I do have one massive caveat though before I wholeheartedly recommend this book to you. It is classified as YA, and I think that's very fair. Again, our main character is 17. We are dealing with some more mature themes here, death. There are some action scenes that are a little intense, but in terms of actually reading it, it reads like middle grade. The language, the prose, it is very simple and easy to understand. When I first started it, I thought I had misclassified it on my spreadsheet. I was like, oh, this is middle grade. This isn't YA. I messed up. I need to fix this. And then I read that the main character was 17. And I was like, oh, this is YA. This is just transitional. And I think that's a really awesome thing. I think there should be more books like this that deal with more older teen type stories, but with the language that we associate with books for younger students, because there are students with disabilities, there are students with dyslexia who are reading English as their second language, who for just dozens and dozens of reasons might have a harder time with some of the other fantasy YA books that are out there for them, but they don't want to read the stuff that's with kitschy little 10-year-olds either. I think this is existing in a very specific niche. I just think if you're an adult who's going to read this book, you should know before you do that that is the niche that it is operating in, and to be prepared for that level of prose. Also, almost forgot to mention it because it honestly barely affects the story at all, but Ellie is ace. And I appreciated that very much. While I do want more stories about the ace experience, I do also sometimes just want a story where the main character can talk to ghosts and happens to be ace. And I really appreciated that that was an element of this. Last year, I read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain because I wanted to read both it and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn before I read James by Percival Everett. And we will talk about James later, but first, let's talk about Huckleberry Finn. Here's the thing, I have a bit of a complicated relationship with Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn because I went to elementary and middle school in Missouri, and Missouri is very proud of the fact that Mark Twain is from there, so they will do those books in the elementary school curriculum. I did both of them in 4th grade, maybe 5th grade. And I, at the time, as a 10-year-old, did not like them because both Tom and Huck were so annoying to me as characters. Reading them again as an adult, I see that it's because Mark Twain has quite brilliantly portrayed that type of kid, that energetic, adventurous, mischievous, let's be real, obnoxious 10-year-old boy. He portrays that so well. But I was a 10-year-old girl with an obnoxious little brother, and so I hated Tom Sawyer and I hated Huck Finn. And if you also hated Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn as a kid, I think it's worth revisiting them. I think there is some real value to these books. I enjoyed Huck Finn more than I enjoyed Tom Sawyer, also, for what it's worth. So if you only are wanting to revisit one of them, have it be Huck Finn, I would say. That said, I would not call it my favorite classic of all time. It was fine. I gave it 4 stars because I think it definitely has earned its place in American literary canon. But I will probably not revisit those for a very long time. I've had my fill. I'm good now. No need to go back to the Mississippi. Except for in James. Now, let's take a quick break from books and talk about the comics and manga that I have read so far this year. If you will recall from our 5 for 2025 video, I have given Stephen 5 books that he is to read this year, and he has given me 5 books to read this year. Although actually, he gave me 3 books, 2 manga, and a comic. And that comic was Batman the Long Halloween. We have a full discussion video of this comic on our page. You can go and watch that right now. So I will be very brief here, but suffice it to say, I gave this 4 stars. I enjoyed it quite a lot. I have my issues with some of its storytelling choices, and I think overall it's a little long for what it is, but it's got excellent Batman vibes. And if you are a fan of The Batman, the Robert Pattinson Batman movie, I think this is worth a read because there is a lot in this that inspires the Batman, and there's a lot from this that the Batman is pulling from. And it was really fun to see kind of some of that connective tissue as I was reading. So I do recommend. Now, Batman the Long Halloween is not the only book from the 5 for 25 list that I have read. I have also started reading Akane Banashi. Now, I'm not finished with it yet, or rather, I'm not where Stephen wants me to be yet. Stephen wants me to get to the end of a specific arc, and that arc ends at the end of chapter 77, which in terms of the volumes is partway through volume 9. I have read the first 4 volumes. So I have read all the way through the Karaku Cup, and I have started the arc that is right after the Karaku Cup. For those of you who don't know, Akane Banashi is the story of a young high school girl named Akane. She is in her final year of high school, and it is her dream, it is her life's mission to become a Rakugo performer. So I have roughly 5 volumes left before I'm totally finished with the amount that Stephen would like me to read of this, but I am very much enjoying what I am reading so far. I am very interested to see where we will go from here, because I gave volume 1 and 2 4 stars, but volume 3, which is the almost entire Karaku Cup arc, I gave 5 stars. I thought the Karaku Cup arc was so well done. The pacing, the dramatic tension, the other performances from her competitors that we get to see, everything about it was just done so well. And volume 3 ends on a cliffhanger of the Karaku Cup arc, and then half of volume 4 is finishing off the Karaku Cup arc, and then the other half of it starts the next arc. I gave volume 4 4.5 stars just to account for how solid the Karaku Cup arc is. It was just very good. That's the only volume of manga, spoiler alert, that I have given 5 stars this year, was volume 3 of Akane Banashi, so I have high hopes for where the series will go from here. So like I said, I've read 7 volumes of manga this year. The first 4 were those Akane Banashi volumes, and the other 3 are volumes of a manga that I did not read because of our 5 for 25 video. It is a manga that I read because action comedy, what if John Wick had a good ending actually and everybody got to live, sounded way too good to pass up. And I was right. Sakamoto Days is so much fun. We follow our hero, Taro Sakamoto, who is the owner of a convenience store in a small town, and he is just trying to live his life, help his community, be a good husband, be a good father. There's just one problem. Taro Sakamoto was once the best assassin in the world, and he gave up that life. Some assassins show up one day, and they're like, hey man, there's a bounty on your head, and we're gonna collect. Now, fortunately, he is still very much the best assassin in the world, so he is totally capable of dealing with these threats to his life. There's just one problem. His wife, Aoi, has a strict no killing policy in their family rules. And so he has to be a little creative with how he deals with these threats. This is kind of a like monster of the week type of shonen where each new struggle is against a new assassin with a new gimmick who is trying to collect on the bounty. There's some interesting overarching mystery as to who is killing these other assassins. Why is there a bounty on Sakamoto's head? All of these things, it's keeping things interesting, but primarily this is a comedy. This is an action comedy. The action goes from badass to hilarious faster than you can blink, and it is just, it's a wild ride, and it's so much fun. I gave volume 1 4 stars. I gave volumes 2 and 3 4.5 stars. It is just so much fun, a surprising amount of heart. I love a good found family, and they have just enough emotional sweetness between them all to keep me going, aw, even as they, you know, fight their way through impossible situations. I'm very excited to see where the arc that I'm currently on goes. I feel like we're getting into some meaty plot with that. If you, like me, heard the concept, what if John Wick's family did not die and he got to still be a super badass assassin, but who doesn't kill anyone because that would make his wife sad, and he and a found family have to keep people from trying to kill them? If that sounds fun to you, read this. It's really fun. Shifting gears now back into books for the rest of the video, I have the very first thing that I read this year, and that is The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. This is a cozy fantasy about our main character here, Tao. She is a fortune teller, but she only tells small fortunes. She can tell you if it might rain next week, or what the best color hat to wear to church would be. Something like that, something small. We meet a found family. First we have traveling companions by necessity, but then the more time we spend with one another, we get to know each other, we get to love each other. I really enjoyed this. I am a cozy fantasy enjoyer, and to me, this is the perfect blend of a book that has more stakes than Legends and Lattes, but not as many stakes as something like Skin of the Sea, where the very balance of the gods is thrown out of proportion by your actions. This is a very intimate story. We are searching for one missing child rather than trying to save the world. We are trying to focus on our personal growth and character development rather than the entire geopolitical implications of the threat of war. We are having tea and cookies by the fire, and it's a warm hug like a good cozy fantasy should be. I think it worked really well. I gave this 4.5 stars. I liked it quite a lot, and I would very much read more from this author. I believe this was her debut, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. And if you enjoy cozy fantasy, particularly cozy fantasy that's got a little bit more meat story-wise to gnaw on, then this could be one for you. Speaking of cozy fantasy that has a little bit of meat to gnaw on, we have House of Frank by Kay Sinclair. I almost hesitate to call this cozy fantasy. I'd almost say cozy adjacent fantasy because it has all the ingredients of cozy fantasy. It's got a charming setting that you wish that you could like just step inside and live in. It has a heartwarming cast of found family, lovable characters. It's got a real focus on quiet moments, on describing food and baked goods, but this is not a sweet story about telling fortunes or owning a coffee shop. This is a intimate look at illness, at loss, and mainly at grief. This is a book about mourning. In House of Frank, we follow a witch named Syka as she comes to the Ash Garden to fulfill her sister's dying wish, which was to have her ashes planted at the Ash Garden and turned into a tree. And when she arrives there, the garden's proprietor, Frank, can tell that she's not quite ready to move on to that next step. And Frank, who by the way is a mythological creature, who like a minotaur-esque, like big beefy guy who wears cardigans. He's very sweet. I love Frank dearly. But Frank offers her a place at Ash Tree. He says, hey, listen, it looks like you maybe need a place to call home for a while, so you can stay here as long as you need. And Syka says, you know what? I think maybe I could use that. So she stays and she joins the staff at Ash Gardens and meets the other magical caretakers of the place. We've got cherubs, other witches, a fairy, an elf. We've got all manner of magical creatures. They're all wonderful. And Syka gets to know each of them and comes to grow closer with each of them. And as she does, she becomes more and more comfortable with the process of grieving for her lost sister. We are dealing with heavy emotions here, and your mileage may vary, but I cried at least twice, maybe 3 times. I know other readers, I read this in a book club, and there were others who cried at many, many points throughout the book that I personally did not, which is why I hesitate to call it cozy. But like Psalm for the Wild-Built, which is, using the setting of cozy fantasy to ask the reader a lot of philosophical questions, I think House of Frank uses the setting of cozy fantasy to facilitate a conversation and an experience of grief. And I think it does that exceptionally well. I gave this 4.5 stars. I tabbed it, and I definitely will be rereading this one, and I would check your warnings, make sure you're in a place where you're ready to tackle this book, but 100% give it a read when you're ready to. On the complete opposite side of the fantasy spectrum from Teller of Small Fortunes and House of Frank, we have The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. This is a political fantasy set in an empire inspired by Indian and South Asian culture. We are following a princess who is imprisoned by her tyrannical emperor brother and a maidservant with a secret past that she is hiding from almost everyone around her, as well as a dozen other conspirators, royals, noble houses, points of view of rebel leaders, children on the street, drunken princes, philosophers. This is a true political fantasy, and it feels like almost anything that I talk about in this book would be spoiling it because of how intricate all of the politics and all of the sides are. Also, there is a spooky forest and an enchanted disease that makes you slowly turn into a tree person. This basically has everything that I want in a fantasy book. It's got a rich and fully realized setting, multicultural, lots of different customs and religions mingling together and causing this really interesting interplay. We've got a diverse cast of characters with different perspectives on life, on revolution, on power, and we've got a plot that kept me guessing the whole way, but in a good way, where I'm questioning characters' allegiances and motivations every time something new is revealed to me about the world or about the story. It makes me want to find out what will happen next. The only thing that held this back from being a 5-star book for me was the pacing is a little bit wonky. The beginning is, I would say, perfectly paced. The middle is slow, but I thought slow in a fine way. I was okay with the slowness, but in retrospect, I think the middle could have been a little bit faster paced because the last third of this book is breakneck. There is so much happening all the time. Everywhere you turn, there's something new going on. It was a little jarring, and that combined with the fact that while I love all of the characters' points of view, I do wish we had gotten to know some of them and their relationships with one another a little bit more deeply. Left this being a 4.5 rather than a 5, but it is a strong recommend. I cannot wait to find out what happens next. I cannot wait to read book 2. Judging by my friends who have read the whole series or who have at least read book 2, this is not a trilogy that suffers from middle book syndrome. If anything, it has first book syndrome, and it only gets better from here. And I can't wait to see what happens next to my poor girls who just deserve to run away and be gay in the woods together, but alas, the world will not let them have that happiness. Now, The Jasmine Throne might have been just short of being a 5-star book, but everything else on this list was 5 stars. And to start off talking about the 5-star books that I've read so far this year, let's talk about Alice Oseman. Now, until last year, my only experience with Alice Oseman was her book Loveless, which is her book about the Aro Ace experience. I read that in 2022. I did really enjoy it, but I've always intended to go back and read the rest of her work, and last year I read what is probably her most well-known and most beloved work, Heartstopper. I really enjoyed Heartstopper, so I decided that this year would be the year that I read the rest of her books. So I did that. Over the last couple of months, I've been reading each of Alice Oseman's other books. In fact, I finished I Was Born for This just 2 days ago. I read Solitaire, then I read the novella This Winter, then the novella Nick and Charlie, then the novel Radio Silence, and then the novel I Was Born for This. Alice Oseman's books are all technically in the same universe. They all take place in the same world. Events that happen in each of them are canon to each of them. However,
Can I have my book?
thank you. At least they're reading it. What was I saying? Something about Alice Oseman books being connected. Right. All of Alice Oseman's books take place in the same world, but it doesn't really matter what order you read them in, and the only things that are really, truly connected are Solitaire and Heartstopper. Quite honestly, I could talk about these books for a really long time, and I'm probably just going to make a separate video about them. So if you would like to see me ramble about all of the Alice Oseman-verse books, then do let me know. Suffice it to say, every Alice Oseman book that I have read in both this year and last year, I've given 5 stars. I gave all of Heartstopper 5 stars. I gave every book by her I read this year 5 stars. I will say, though, I gave everything 5 stars kind of in different ways and for different reasons. Just to keep it brief for now, I would say that Radio Silence was my favorite conceptually. It is the one that I related to the most, whereas I Was Born for This was the most compulsively readable. I read that in 2 days flat. I could not put it down. I had to know what would happen next. The novellas, This Winter and Nick and Charlie, were honestly just like really sweet and nostalgic for me. Even though they are both about more heavy things than Heartstopper, they are explicitly about Charlie and Nick and Charlie and Nick and Charlie. Who'd have thunk it? And This Winter is also about Tori, and I had read it right after Solitaire. So even though the characters are, relatively new to me because I read Heartstopper in December, reading those novellas was kind of like coming home and like seeing these characters again, and it was very, very sweet. Solitaire it's brilliant. I can't believe that that's her debut novel. It's stunningly good. Again, not my favorite. I think Radio Silence is my favorite, but it's very, very good. Honestly, if you are even remotely interested in reading anything by Alice Oseman, I would say definitely do it. You can start almost anywhere. You can start with Heartstopper if you want something really light and fluffy. You can start with the novels if you want something a little meatier. The only place that you can't start is This Winter or Nick and Charlie, because those are tie-in novellas and they really don't work if you haven't read at least Heartstopper, if not also Solitaire. So don't read the novellas first, but otherwise read whichever one looks good to you, because these books are great. You ever try to read a book as a teenager because you think it's one of those things that you should read? That happened to me with Fahrenheit 451. I was never forced to read Fahrenheit 451 in school. It was not an assigned book, but it was on the shelf of my English teacher's school, classroom shelf. And I had the thought, I should read it. And I tried to read it, and I never finished it. For the first time, I was experiencing a book that I wasn't quite getting. I could tell that what I was reading was important, but I also couldn't quite tell why. There was a lot of reference and allusion in it to things that I just, as a teenager in the 2010s, didn't quite understand. And so I didn't finish it. And I said to myself, I will come back to this. When I am older and I am wiser, I will come back and I will understand this book and I will love it. And that might sound very presumptuous of me, but it's 10 years later and I read it and oh my gosh, it's so good. It's 5 stars. It's incredible. Wow. Teenage me was right. Now, I will say, I think a huge part of the reason why I had such a good time with this book this time around is because I was not reading it. I was listening to the audiobook version narrated by Tim Robbins. And I wouldn't recommend reading this book any other way for your first time reading it all the way through. He does an amazing job with the narration. The parts that I found confusing reading them in prose as a teenager were completely clear through just the clarity of Tim's narration, through the way he acts out the different characters and gives them these distinct voices. In particular, when I was scrolling through a PDF of the book to look for a quote, which is legal, by the way, Fahrenheit 451 is in the public domain, but I found the section where the fireman captain is talking to the main character in his bedroom, and he's just kind of word vomiting at him, which is the point. He is kind of trying to ideologically wear him down, but that word vomit on the page was kind of hard for me to read, and I already knew what happened. I was just looking for a quote. But when Tim Robbins read it, the rhythm and emotion and cadence of that whole speech, I was on the edge of my seat. I was hanging off of every word. This is an audiobook that you just need to experience. The ending, the last page, like the last paragraph, I was like legitimately tearing up. I was not expecting this classic from 1952 to make me cry. But the way that he reads that ending, I was tearing up. It's so good. You've got to listen to it. And now we have come back to James by Percival Everett. Even if you don't pay any special attention to the book space, to the book world online, to publishing news, anything like that, you have probably heard of James by Percival Everett. It is a literary fiction book that is a reimagining, a retelling of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but it is not from Huck Finn's perspective. It is from Jim's perspective. This is the first book by Percival Everett that I've ever read. Percival Everett, excuse me. And I need to read his other work because, oh my word, he is truly a master of making deep philosophical prose extremely digestible, extremely readable. This is not a slog. This is not a chore. This is not homework. It will make you think. It will make you look at things in a way you've never looked at them before, but it is not difficult to read. It's very accessible, which I really appreciated. This is not a retelling of Huck's story from Jim's perspective. This is James's story. And I think that's an important distinction to make. The way that Huck Finn starts is, you probably only know about me because you read a book called Tom Sawyer. And that book was written by a guy named Mark Twain. Now, he told the truth mainly. He stretched some things a little bit, but he told the truth mainly. It was mainly a true book. And the framing of it is basically that, my name's Huck Finn, and I'm not letting Mark Twain tell my story. This is my story told in my voice. Notably, Huck Finn is in first person, Tom Sawyer is in third person. But the whole framing of it being Huck kind of saying, this is my story, and I'm telling it how it actually happened, is dropped pretty quickly. It's just kind of the setup, and then we move on into the story. James, on the other hand, is constantly aware of and reminding you that not only is this James's story told from James's perspective, but it is vital that this is his story, and it is vital that he tell this story. This book uses language in such a beautiful way. Dissertations can be written and will be written about this book. It's so good, but it's not homework. Please don't think of this as homework. Just read it. It's really, really good. I think I would say that James is my third favorite book of this year so far, and that's kind of weird to say because I can't quite decide what my favorite is. I'm kind of going back and forth between two. So let's just go ahead and say that these last two are tied for first place, and we can go ahead and give James second place, okay? First up, we have The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I brought up Psalm of the Wild Bill earlier. This is the same author. I love this book. How do I describe this book? It's heartwarming, but it's also heart-wrenching. It is a fun romp through outer space, and it is a hard look at what it means to have control over your life and to be responsible for things outside of your control. It is a look at family, at found family, at biological family, at chosen family. It is a book about relationships. It's got big Star Trek vibes. It's got big Firefly vibes. It's like what if the Star Trek world that didn't suck quite as badly as the Firefly world, but still more like DS9 Star Trek and less TNG TOS Star Trek, in terms of it being, you know, not quite as utopic as people would have you believe. And then also it being very blue collar. Like, this is the ship that we are on. We are on the Wayfarer, and it's a blue collar ship, you know? It's basically, imagine a construction crew. That's kind of what the vibe here is. And the crew of this ship, the Wayfarer, they are on a long trip, a long way, to a small planet at the outer edge of the like Federation, essentially. I don't remember what they call it in the book, but the Federation territory, and they are going out to build essentially a wormhole jumper so that people can travel to and from that planet more quickly, but it will take them over a year to get there. It's everything I love about sci-fi in one package. This is the perfect sci-fi book for me. There are 4 other books in this world by this author, and I can't wait to read all of them. This is one of the easier 5 stars that I've given out this year. This book was like made for me in a laboratory. However, if anything other than cozy found family on a spaceship going on an interstellar journey is made for me in a laboratory, it is Sherlock Holmes and John Watson dynamic in a fantasy world with really cool magic. And that is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is a fantastical twist on the Holmes-Watson dynamic. It is not a straight retelling. Our characters' names are not Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson, but it is a adaptation kind of in the way that Psych is an adaptation or House is an adaptation. The characters might have different names, but you look at Anna Dobra and you know that is Sherlock Holmes. You look at Din and you know that is John Watson. And you look at the eldritch abominations that rise out of the sea every wet season and lay rampage to the surrounding countryside unless they are stopped by a battalion of walls and missiles, and you know, oh my gosh, I've never read anything like this before. But that's what happens. That is the world that this story is set in. But this is not a story about defending yourself from a giant leviathan coming out of the sea. This is a murder mystery with a deeply compelling main character. In classic Holmes and Watson form, we are in Watson, Din. We are in Din's head the whole time. We never see Anna's perspective, but we do get to see the crime scenes. We get to interview suspects. We get to see interesting action scenes. Everything about this is so cool. I love this so much. Made in a lab for me. Just like Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. There is a second book in this series coming out in April, I think. And I would like it. I would like it very much, please. I would like my hands on it because I need more of this. This book has got that sauce, you know? This is the good stuff right here. So, I don't know if that made any sense, because if you haven't noticed, I tend to ramble off on a tangent when I get excited about a thing. But hey, what else is YouTube for, right? So that is everything that I read in 2025, quarter 1, January, February, March, all 27 books / comics / manga volumes, whatever we want to call it. I hope that you enjoyed hanging out with me as I rambled at you about all of those things. If you have read any of these books, please let me know in the comments. Please do chat with me about them there. I would love to know what other people's thoughts on these are. Even if you disagree with me, I would still love to hear your thoughts. Tell me why Skin of the Sea is your favorite YA fantasy book. Tell me why The Tainted Cup is your least favorite Sherlock Holmes adaptation. I won't bite you, I promise. Probably. And let me know what other books that you have read this year, if you have any recommendations for me based on how you've judged my taste in this video. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to support what we do here, I would very much appreciate it if you clicked the YouTube buttons. They do YouTube things, and we very much appreciate it when that happens. Until next time, my name has been Taylor. Once again, this is Oscar, and thank you very much for watching the bookcase. I'll see you later.